What's up, guys? In this episode, we're going to talk about the contest selections for this upcoming week's UFC 284. Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, and also some samples of how to build those lineups for said selected contests. Let's go. All right, guys, taking a look at the numbers here. When I'm looking at the fight card, looking at the spreadsheet, again, this is imported from stochastic.com. I like to look at number one, how many fights are on the fight card. And for this UFC 284, so far we have 13 fight cards, 13 fight card. That's about mid-range. 13 is the line I draw. Anything below 13 I would call a low fight card. Anything above 13 I would call a little bit more of a larger fight card. That's important because the more fights you have, the easier it is to get different, which benefits you for GPPs. Whereas if it's a small fight card, it's a little bit more difficult to separate yourself from the crowd. So I personally go cash game heavy on smaller fight cards. Of course, it does have to, a couple other criterias have to be fulfilled in order for me to go heavier on the cash games. And that's how many favorites there are on the fight card that are 2-1 or greater. That's the line I draw for legit favorites where I can rely on them to win if they are 2-1 or greater. Talking in percentages, that's 67%, around 66 to 67%. Anything above that, I can rely. Of course, this is all percentages and this is MMA and anything can happen, but it's a little bit more reliable when it's 66, 67% and higher. And in this fight card, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 13. So that's more than half of the fight card. So that's another criteria that's being fulfilled. So I'm looking at cash game here. Last thing I look at is the main event, how stackable main event. That won't stop me. I probably still would go cash game even the main event wasn't stackable. But this is a decently stackable main event. It's not the best one because Makhachev is pretty heavily favored over Volkanovski, and his inside the distance to finish him is over 50% at 56%. But it's not like last week's main event where it was Spivak and Lewis, and you knew somebody was going to go out pretty quickly. This could maybe go 5 rounds. We don't know. Volkanovski is a very durable fighter, but Makhachev is an animal. So it's not the best stackable main event, but it is doable. So I would stack this. So with that said, let's build some cash game lineups. An example here, I first start with my punt, and the punt I always select is the fighter. And in this spot, I'm not looking for a win. With cash games, you're looking for 4 winners to have a good chance of defeating your opponent. Number one, you're looking for opponents that aren't as experienced. So look in the lobby. If there's people that are challenging head to head and they don't have badges, challenge them. So look for easier opponents. So when you're actually building a lineup, at the punts, we're looking at fighters that are gonna have the best chance to go all 3 rounds and accumulate any points. You're just looking for any points at your punt. This is mostly to save money, and this is gonna be your chalk it up to your loss number 1. So with that said, Elise Reed is my first punt, or my only punt, but she fills in that slot, saves me money. I'll stack the main event with Islam Makhachev and Alexander Volkanovski. It's pretty trippy of how much of a favorite. I mean, I guess it makes sense because he is a higher weight class, but the fact that Volkanovski is that much of an underdog is pretty crazy to see him like that. So we have $8,866 left average per fighter, and I'm looking at this line right here, Malarkey on up. So we can go Malarkey. Let's see, Malarkey, Rodriguez, and Pedro. Yes, we have $200 left over, but we're not able to go past. We can't go lock boon me because I don't want to. I mean, you can't stack that and Ellis Reed, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't double stack here. Hmm. Yeah, so you're guaranteed one win here. Ellis Reed is your loss, and you're just banking on the fact that Malarkey, Rodriguez, and Pedro are gonna win. It's basically a parlay of Malarkey, Rodriguez, and Pedro. Is the way you can look at this. Um, so that's an example of a cash game. Another pivot you can do if you don't want to do Elise Reed, if you want to do a different um, punt, if you want to go above Pedro, Rodriguez, and Malarkey, maybe go for Jack Della Madonna, Madalena, Jack Della Madalena, or Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins is highlighted in orange because does have a grappling advantage. The grappling advantage criteria I have is if they have greater than three takedowns per fight, and their opponent has less than 50% takedown percentage. That's where I give the grappling advantage to someone, and that's important because grappling does accumulate a lot of points. If somebody has a grappling advantage, that's a very good way to accumulate points outside of finishes. So if you want to go for Jack, there's two Jacks. Either Jacks, if you want to go for either Jacks, you can pivot off of Reed and go down to Brenner because he does have behind Reed has the lowest inside the distance odds. He's at a negative 105, whereas Reed is 215. I know it's a pretty big jump, but it's still lower than anything in between them. You know what I mean? Volkanovski's at negative 180. Shane is negative 210. Randy Brown negative 200. So you can go Brenner, and he does save you a lot of money that way. They still have him labeled as Oliveira, but instead of Reed, you could go Brenner or Oliveira in this case. That gives you $800 to play with, or saved you $800 compared to Reed. So now we have 9,066. So now we can go. Say you want to go, Madalena. You go Madalena. Maybe you can even go Madalena and Jenkins. Can you do that? Yeah. And Malarkey. Boom. You could do something like that. That's another great cash game lineup. I actually like this one better than the other one. But that's another example. So moving on. Man, I should save those. Moving on. I want to explain a little bit to these highlights. This yellow one shouldn't be here. These highlights, the purple highlights, the light purple, is these fighters have less than 3 fights in the UFC. And to me, that says that these stats aren't as reliable as other fighters that have more experience at UFC because they have more of a test sample size. Is that even a word? More of a sample size to see how they fare against other high-level UFC, because as we all know, UFC is the number one damn organization in MMA, and you don't know how fighters are until they really test themselves in the UFC. So if they have less than 3 fighters, that's a red flag if they're favorites. And if they're underdogs, I'm more likely to go with the underdog that's has less experience because we don't yet know what he's capable of. That's not an exact science. That's just a deciding factor. If I want to go for A or B, I take what I just said into consideration. So that's what the purple, you're probably wondering, what the hell is all that purple? But that's what it is. The orange is any grappling advantage. I did bold Jack Jenkins because he's also less than 3 fights in the UFC. So moving on, GPPs. This seems a bit difficult to play large field GPPs. I don't even like playing them in the first place, let alone something like this in this fight card. So I'm going to stick with smaller GPPs. I do still like playing GPPs even though this is catered more towards a cash game, I'll just go lower on GPPs and go higher in cash games as far as my bankroll. So looking at GPP plays, number one, the first thing I'll look at is, so number one, I have a red line here. That's a red for a reason. I do not like dipping below that because I don't like dipping below a fighter that's lower than 33% chance win rate. I believe that's a true underdog, and that's pretty hard to hit, especially smaller field GPPs where you don't really have to go dumpster diving. I might do it depending on the case. Nothing is set in stone. These are just little, how can you say it, little, like they direct me on how to do things. So I still might go down here, especially with all this purple, and we're not sure of how these guys are going to perform, considering the fact that they have less than 3 fights in UFC. But we'll get to that when we get there. So number one, what sticks out like a sore thumb is Josh Culibao at 11% ownership. 50%, basically a toss-up, a pick'em game, pick'em fight. I'm mostly sticking to that 11% ownership. So I'll start my GPP with Culibao and go from there. Also, I want to start paying for inside the distance percentage. Let's see how much money I could save above this red line. First thing we come into is Builder. He is a newer fighter. I like that. He is an underdog. We are going to have to pick some underdogs. So let's go with Builder as our underdog number one. So we have 8,475. I like Justin Tafa. He is a favorite, but I like the fact that he's at a 43% finish inside the distance. So a higher volatility. You're looking for volatility. So here I'm picking Tafa for that inside the distance odds. And also he's at 20% ownership. So that's a great ownership percentage there. So we'll go Tafa, 8,503 slots left. I don't like Rodriguez here. First of all, he's going to be highly owned at 41%, and his inside the distance isn't that great. As we all know, Josh M is a very durable fighter, so I don't like Rodriguez for GPPs or cash games because he's in this weird middle ground here. So I want to get up to Jimmy Crute at least because he has a 52% inside the distance, and his inside the distance fight is the biggest in the whole card. So lots of volatility there. If I don't get to Crute, I'll get to Menefield because that's the opposite side of the 325. I at least want one of these two fighters because it's the highest inside the distance fight in general in the whole fight card. So can I get to Crute? Can we get to Crute? And then we're at 8,450. I don't like Young. This is tough. I would have to do something like go up to Malarkey at 51%. And then go dumpster diving after this. So 8,200. So maybe go dumpster diving and then pay up. Because the most we can afford is, which we can't because we have Calabao. And we have Tafa. It would be Josh Emmett, but I don't like him. Menefield, we can't go Menefield. We can't go Prado. So Ross and below. So maybe Ross at 10% ownership, 25% win rate. He is a newer fighter, so maybe a Shannon Ross. And then we can move up from Malarkey to Makachev. Do we think Makachev is going to win or be optimal? Yeah, we can go up to Makachev. So we have Makachev, Crute, Tafa. Makachev, Crute, Tafa. So pretty decent favorites there that we can rely on to win their fights somewhat. At least Makachev, Crute, Tafa. We're not really going too much for win percentages in GPP. We're more, that's more for cash as we're looking at that. We're looking more at ownership. which is getting us different, and sealing inside the distance. So we had Tafa Krut, Makachev. Who do we go down to? Do we go down to Ross? Yeah, we went down to Ross and Builder, and just basically coin tosses. We're hoping Ross pulls out the major upset here. Over who is he fighting? Over Rodriguez. Both new fighters. So Ross is actually a pretty. I like that pick down here at 10%. Gets us different. Two newcomers going at it, still improving. Let's see what happens. That's where I'm gonna cut it here. Thank you guys for watching. Again, I'm doing Rainmakers content too, so look out for that. I have a couple of ideas I'm planning to do, so stick around, and thank you guys for watching.